Hey guys, tonight we're headed into a snow-laced Viking village at the very edge of the world. Thick pine forests creak under the weight of fresh frost, and golden firelight spills from longhouses built from timber and turf. Somewhere in the distance, a horn calls out, deep and rumbling like the belly of a mountain. You trudge forward, breath fogging in the icy dusk, toward a celebration so big it's rumored to feed 3 villages and offend 5 gods. But here's the thing. They say the last person who tried to host this banquet never made it to dessert. You probably won't survive this either. Not because of swords or trolls or anything flashy like that. No, you're more likely to slip on an eel or choke on a beetroot roasted wrong. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've arrived at Jarfjell, a hilltop village balanced like a raven's nest above the fjords. The Jarl, a broad-shouldered woman named Astrid Beartooth, is throwing what she calls the banquet of eternal roast. The name's ambitious, the guest list longer than a saga, and the smoke from the hearth is already curling into the night sky like a promise. You duck through the woven reed curtain of the longhouse and are hit with the smell of pine tar, wet fur, and anticipation. Dozens of villagers scurry across the floor, younglings chasing each other with ladles, old warriors practicing exaggerated belches, and at least one goat enthusiastically eating the hem of someone's tunic. It's a day of rare calm in this part of the world. No raiding, no storms, no cursed amulets today. The mead barrels are stacked high, glistening like honey treasure. The centerpiece? A wild boar, fattened on apples, herbs, and, according to one guy in a helmet, the occasional leftover waffle. This banquet is more than just a feast, it's a political move, a sacrifice to the gods, and a massive flex to nearby rival clans. If this goes well, Astrid could cement her place as the de facto queen of the coast. If it goes badly, well, there's always Valhalla. They say historians still argue whether these feasts were mainly diplomatic, spiritual, or just an excuse to eat like absolute maniacs. But for now, you're just another traveler with a wooden cup and a growling stomach, trying to blend in. Someone hands you a strip of smoked reindeer and slaps your back hard enough to rearrange your spine. Eat fast, he grins. Before the gods change their minds. A skald with a beard like tangled rope sings a ballad about a fish that stole a man's wife. No one seems to mind the accuracy of the story, mostly because they're distracted by the smells wafting from the back, roasted onions, stewing cabbage, and the sharp, salty punch of fermented shark. Out back, the cooks work like battle generals. An enormous iron spit has been set up over a fire pit the size of a horse trough. You spot a young woman flipping out cakes with a shield. Another stirs a cauldron using what might have once been a spear. Everything seems in place. Almost too in place. There's a tension under the laughter. It's subtle, like the edge of a blade hidden in fur. You hear hushed words between a couple of servants. Something about a delay. A problem with the main dish. Then you notice, where's the boar? No one said anything. Not officially. But there's a conspicuous, boar-shaped absence in the center of the fire pit. A wide, greasy tray has been scrubbed clean. No bones. No apple in the mouth. Nothing. Just ash and a single cracked tusk lying off to one side. You walk a bit closer. Someone's dropped a meat hook in the snow. It's covered in something sticky and suspiciously dark. Maybe plum sauce. Maybe not. As the sun slides lower, the cheerful noise inside the longhouse begins to fade, replaced by murmurs and increasingly dramatic sneezes from the man with a leek allergy. Jarl Astrid hasn't said a word yet. She stands in full ceremonial fur, her brow furrowed deep enough to lose a dice in. The feast is supposed to begin at moonrise. That's less than an hour away. And the star of the show, the boar blessed by the village priest, fattened for weeks, and meant to symbolize prosperity, is gone. You realize you're not here just to eat. You're now part of something, stranger. A culinary whodunit. A disappearance so bizarre it'll be sung about for generations, probably with extra dramatic flair and very inaccurate musical accompaniment. As the first stars flicker into view and the wind whispers through the trees, someone finally speaks. Where's the meat? The question lands with the weight of a hammer dropped on bare toes. Everyone freezes. Even the goat chewing on the table leg pauses mid-chomp. Where's the meat? Echoes again, this time louder, more accusing, and definitely directed at the kitchen crew, who collectively try to look busy enough to avoid eye contact. Jarl Astrid's gaze sweeps the room. She doesn't yell, yet. Instead, she strides toward the fire pit and points at the empty spit with a steady finger, as if it might confess under pressure. "Someone talk," she says, calm but crackling. "No." A pale cook named Eirik steps forward, clutching a ladle like a defensive weapon. "It was here," he squeaks. "It was here this morning. I basted it myself. With herbs. And, melted goose fat. I sang to it." "You sang to it?" A warrior scoffs. "It's a bonding ritual," Eirik mutters, mortified. A ripple of murmured concern passes through the guests. Vikings are many things: traders, raiders, expert beard groomers, but wasteful is not one of them. A Vanishing Banquet centerpiece isn't just embarrassing. It's ominous. Especially when you consider that the boar was sacred to Freyr, god of peace, prosperity, and not randomly ghosting his own party. Someone lets out a nervous laugh. It doesn't help. You step closer to the hearth, pretending to inspect a barrel while actually scanning for clues. The ash around the spit is undisturbed. No dragging marks. No footprints. Just that cracked tusk, lying too neatly, too cleanly. Could it have run off? A child asks, wide-eyed. "Boars don't run off half-cooked," mutters Astrid. Unless, of course, someone didn't want it cooked at all. Historians still argue whether Viking banquets were prone to elaborate sabotage or if the tales of culinary curses are just drunken exaggerations, but whatever the case, something here smells fishy. And not in the usual fermented way. "Check the storehouse," Astrid orders. "And the drying sheds. Check under the tables for all I care." You volunteer. Mostly because no one else moves, and also because your curiosity is currently outweighing your survival instincts by just a bit. Outside, the cold bites harder now. The moon is rising, a pale coin tossed into the dark sky. You walk past the back wall of the longhouse, where icicles drip like slow knives from the roof. Around the corner, you find the food storehouse, its wooden door creaking ominously. Inside, shelves sag under the weight of smoked fish, turnip bundles, and rows of sealed crocks labeled in faint runes. One of them reads yogurt, with a question mark, which is deeply unsettling. No boar. You glance around. There are no drag marks here either. No blood. No signs of a struggle between meat and man. Just the usual food storage chaos and an unpleasantly warm wheel of cheese that's started to hum. Back outside, you hear shouts near the meat barrels. You rush over to find two villagers crouched by the snow, pointing at something. Footprints. Big ones. Barefoot. Which is odd in a village where everyone wears boots, especially in the snow. "Those look human," says one of the villagers. "But not." And he's right. They're wide and flat, with stubby toes and a weird kind of sway between them. Like someone, or something, was waddling. "Drunk," suggests a hopeful voice. "Possessed," offers a less helpful one. You follow the trail a little way. It leads behind the stables, then abruptly vanishes into nothing. The snow around the last print has melted slightly, as if whatever left it gave off heat. Or acid. Or strong body odor. Back in the longhouse, Astrid is not happy. "We are not postponing this banquet," she growls, slamming her fist onto a table, which immediately splits down the middle. "We will find that boar, or I will serve the next best thing. Whoever took it." The priest, an older man named Torvald with a beard that looks like a rolled-up scroll, approaches you quietly. "This isn't the first time," he says. "What?" "A feast. Gone wrong." The boar disappears. The signs return. Always the same, a cracked tusk. Strange tracks. And then, he doesn't finish the sentence. Instead, he hands you something from his pouch, a small, shriveled piece of pickled herring, wrapped in what looks like birch bark covered in runes. "It starts with the meat," he says, eyes wide, "and ends in fire." You try to ask more, but he backs away into the crowd, muttering prayers to Freyr and possibly swearing at Odin under his breath. You're left holding a possibly cursed herring in one hand and a growing sense of dread in the other. Outside, someone sneezes so violently they knock over a bench. The mood has officially shifted. Jokes fall flat. The skald songs falter. Even the goat seems nervous, nibbling on a helmet instead of furniture. And above you, in the clear sky, the northern lights begin to stir, green and flickering, like a warning painted across the heavens. You're starting to get the feeling this isn't about food anymore. The moon climbs higher, casting silver light across the village, and the longhouse flickers with uneasy fire. No one has dared sit down to eat yet. The platters of side dishes are cooling, sliced root vegetables, dried fish woven into decorative braids, and something suspiciously green that may or may not be moss salad. But without the boar, the heart of the feast, it's all just sides. A symphony without its drum. A battle without a sword. A Netflix account without the password. Word travels quickly. As you meander back inside, you hear whispers building, each retelling more dramatic than the last. Some say the boar was stolen by rival clans. Others blame spirits, trolls, or those weird monks who visited last winter and never blinked. Then comes the sound of a horn again. But this time, it's not celebration, it's alarm. You rush toward the village edge where 2 sentries wave torches by the path that leads down to the fjord. They've found something. Or rather, not found something. The pen where the boar had been kept before the feast is now empty. That much was expected. But the gate? Still locked from the outside. The latch untouched. No dig marks under the fence. No sign of a struggle. Just a faint, greasy smear on the wooden. Feathers? Yes, feathers. A few, black, iridescent, raven, maybe. Or something pretending to be one. You crouch to inspect the ground. Another set of those waddling prints again. Same shape, same awkward swerve. But now accompanied by a line, a dragging mark, as if something heavy had been pulled along the snow. And here's the twist. The trail doesn't lead out of the village. It curves back in. You follow it through the sleeping garden patches, past the drying racks where cod hang like crunchy flags, and into the rear courtyard of the longhouse. And there it ends. Vanished again. Mid-print. You stare at the spot, snow-disturbed, but not trampled. Just gone. Like something got swallowed by air. Or the earth. Or maybe slipped into another realm entirely. Historians still debate whether Vikings believed certain thresholds, like gates, hearths, or outhouse doorways, acted as magical portals. Tonight, you're open to the theory. Back in the hall, a new concern arises. A large, spit-polished bronze tray has been knocked off a table. It lands with a crash, and everyone flinches like it's a war horn. The Jarl stands, visibly straining to keep order. Find it. Now, she commands again. Her voice shakes slightly. Not with fear, but something more primal. Shame. A Jarl who loses her banquet meat might as well gift her enemies a banner that reads, "Please raid me." A grizzled warrior named Sveg joins you by the hearth, dragging something wrapped in a fur. We found this outside the cookhouse, he mutters, pulling back the fabric. A tusk. Another one. Except this one is whole, not cracked, and polished to a ceremonial shine. It's not from the missing boar. It's older. Decorative. Magical, maybe. Torvald the priest appears again, drawn by the object like a moth to prophetic doom. That's a votive tusk, he says, squinting. Buried a decade ago to bless the last solstice feast. It was supposed to stay buried. So who dug it up, you ask? Torvald looks around suspiciously. Someone who wants to unbless this one. Great. The tension is thick now. Children are being ushered to corners. The meat is still flowing, but with less cheer and more gulping. Then comes the news that someone has tampered with the side dishes. A serving woman screams, holding up a bowl of what should be honey-glazed parsnips. Only now they're smeared with something black and clumpy, like soot mixed with ash. Or worse. Check the food, Astrid orders, eyes narrowing. And sure enough, another bowl has been spoiled. A beetroot and barley mash, once purple and steaming, now covered in a waxy sheen and reeking of tar. Someone isn't just stealing food. They're sabotaging the whole event. Quietly, persistently, with almost ritual precision. You step outside again, trying to catch your breath in the cold air. That's when you hear it, a low, rhythmic thump. Faint. Repeating. Coming from the barn. You move slowly, sliding the door open on creaky hinges. Inside, horses shift uneasily. A stack of hay rustles. And beneath it, you spot something out of place. A single hoofprint. Boar-shaped. But too deep. Too sharp. As if pressed by something heavier than even the biggest pig you've ever seen. And the smell. It's not rot. It's not blood. It's something older. Stranger. A mix of cold iron, wet earth, and fermented sadness. Like a history you don't want to remember. You back away. Carefully. Outside, you notice a figure watching you from behind the well. Cloaked, hooded, motionless. Just as you take a step toward them, a gust of wind blows, and they're gone. Because of course they are. Back inside, the Jarl's daughter stands up. Enough, she says. We must consider the old tales. The ones we stopped telling because they scared the chickens. She speaks of the Merksvin, the shadow boar, a creature said to rise when offerings are made in vain, or when a feast dishonors the gods. A beast of smoke, hunger, and echoing hooves. Most villagers scoff, but some do not, and the fire suddenly sputters. You don't say it out loud, but you're thinking it. This feast has woken something, or someone, and they are not hungry for applause. The fire coughs again, spitting out a burst of embers that spiral toward the rafters before vanishing like startled fireflies. You feel the whole longhouse hold its breath, as if even the walls are trying to listen. And under the crackle of the flames, there it is again. Thud. A low, deliberate sound. Not quite hoof, not quite foot. Like something stomping from the bottom of a dream you'd rather forget. And it's close. Too close. You glance at the others, trying to gauge if anyone else heard it. A few warriors have stiffened. Torvald the priest now grips his amulet like it's a sponge soaked in courage. Jarl Astrid walks to the center of the room and raises a torch. Enough hiding, she says. Show yourself. No answer. Just silence, and then a faint shimmer, almost a shadow, darting behind the woven reed curtain that leads to the meat cellar. You're the first to move. Which is, frankly, not the smartest decision you've made tonight. But curiosity is chewing holes in your patience, and someone has to find out what's going on before the side dishes become self-aware. You push aside the curtain. The meat cellar is cold, stone-walled, and stacked with barrels that smell like honey, yeast, and 1,000 poor decisions. It's darker here, the torchlight reaching only a few paces ahead. You descend the steps, boots echoing. Something drips nearby. You tilt the torch, and spot a goblet tipped over on the floor, still wet with sticky gold mead. Next to it, a smear. Faint. Greasy. Like the one on the pen door. You crouch, reach out, and the smear flickers. Like it's alive, or a trick of the torch. Behind you, something clanks. You spin around. Nothing but barrels. Unless, no. One of the barrels has been moved slightly off its base. A half-circle scuff on the floor tells the story. You lean in. That's when you spot the markings, tiny runes scratched along the rim. Not standard inscriptions. Something cruder. Symbols of concealment. You whisper, okay, this is officially above my pay grade. Suddenly, a gust of air blasts from the barrel. You jump back, heart skipping like a drunk on stilts. And then, footsteps. Above you. Several pairs. Rushing into the longhouse. You dash back upstairs, just in time to hear shouting. 2 guards have caught sight of a figure, hooded again, near the smoke hole on the roof. Someone who shouldn't be up there. Sveg throws a grappling hook and hauls himself upward, but when he reaches the rooftop, he curses. Gone! Slipped away like a fox in fog. You're now officially on saboteur watch. Which is less fun than it sounds. Everyone splits up to search. You're sent to the far corner of the hall, the shadowed space behind the ale casks. It's dark, damp, and smells like turnip wine, a punishment drink, by the way. And there, in the half-light, you find something new. A scrap of cloth. Not wool. Not linen. Silk. Deep green, embroidered with gold thread. A color and fabric rare in this region. Definitely not local. You bring it to Astrid, who frowns. No one here owns silk, she says flatly. Except for our honored guest from the east. She gestures to her second-in-command, who scurries off to find the guest. But when he returns, panting and pale, his words ice the blood in your ears. He's gone. The foreign guest, a merchant from the distant Rustlands, supposedly here to barter silver for amber, has vanished. Along with his translator, his servant, and, you guessed it, his traveling provisions. Including smoked meats. Now you're thinking, was this just a food theft? A raid from within? Or something deeper? Jarl Astrid isn't satisfied with food-based theories. The boar was sacred, she mutters. Blessed in the temple of Freyr. Anyone who touched it wrong. She doesn't finish the sentence, but Torvald does. Invites hunger. A chilling idea flickers through the room. Hunger not of stomach, but of the land. The gods. Or things older. And then you spot it. Near the fire pit again. New this time. Another mark. A spiral carved into the edge of the hearthstone. Fresh. Still glowing faintly from heat. You lean down, tracing the shape with your finger. It stings. You jerk back. That's not just a carving. That's a sigil. Torvald peers over your shoulder. A bind rune, he whispers. Used for concealment. And sometimes for summoning. Summoning what? He swallows. Depends how hungry you are. You don't like that answer. But before you can press further, there's a loud clatter behind you. A wooden bowl has fallen, no one nearby to have knocked it. It rolls in a slow circle, then comes to rest. Perfectly upright. In the center of the spiral. Then, from the shadows, a deep, almost amused snort. You spin around. Empty. Or not. The fire flares again, this time not from wood, but from the air above it. A strange, sudden whoosh of heat and color. It dies just as quickly, leaving behind only smoke and silence. People begin whispering prayers. Others reach for weapons. You reach for the horn of meat someone left unattended. You've earned it. Then Torvald sighs beside you. It has begun. Could you, elaborate? He pats your shoulder. No. Perfect. Of all the things I expected tonight, you mutter, a priest crying over pickled fish was not on the list. Yet here you are, standing awkwardly in the corner of the longhouse while Torvald, proud keeper of runes, tradition, and suspiciously strong breath, sits on a bench blubbering into a rag. Beside him, a cracked jar of pickled herring, its contents oozing dramatically across the floor like some tragic seafood crime scene. They weren't just herrings, he wails between hiccups. They were blessed, caught during a solar alignment, fermented under sacred stars, stored beneath ashwood. Now he hiccups again, violated. You try your best to look serious. But it's hard. Especially when a fish spine clings to his beard like it's holding out for dear life. Torvald, you begin gently. Are you saying the sabotage included the holy snacks? He nods. The offerings were defiled. This is a bad omen. Worse than a three-ill dream. Worse than a farting rune. A few villagers nearby cross themselves with meat-slick fingers. Superstition runs deep here. But you're starting to think there might be more than myth behind the panic. What do you mean by defiled? You press. Torvald reaches into the folds of his robe and pulls out a long, waxy scroll. He unrolls it with exaggerated care. On it, a diagram of the banquet altar, showing placements for every ceremonial item, candles, bones, carved loaves, and yes, the pickled herrings. He points. This is where the jar was supposed to go. I left it this morning, precisely aligned with the solstice beam. But now! He sniffs and waves his hand dramatically. Now it's been moved. Touched. Maybe licked. You blink. Licked? Or nibbled? He shrugs. The signs are unclear. There's a long pause. Then he leans in closer, voice low. You don't understand. The sacred herring preserves balance. It's a guardian delicacy. You desecrate it, and things begin to wake. Historians still debate whether Norse villagers truly believed certain foods held mystical power or if these tales were post-feast exaggerations designed to explain the consequences of overeating. But tonight, as a herring's glassy eye stares up at you from the floor, you're inclined to believe the old stories. You ask the obvious question, who would do that? Who could do that? Torvald snorts again, not the sad kind this time, but the offended kind. Someone who hates tradition. Or someone who wants chaos. Maybe even. He leans in until his fishy breath fogs your cheek. A Loki follower. Oh great. Trickster god cultists. That's exactly what this dinner needed. You've heard of them, of course. Fringe folk, mostly. Jokers, outcasts, misfits with too much eyeliner and too many ideas about disrupting sacred order. Some are harmless. Others, not. Before you can ask more, a loud thud shakes the room. A shield has fallen from its rack by the fire. But not just any shield, it's the ceremonial shield used only during feasts and rituals. A thick black rune now scorches its surface, a crooked spiral crossed by a jagged line. You glance at Torvald. He's already muttering prayers. That's no accident, he says grimly. That's a rune of inversion. Celebration turned to shame. Gift turned to theft. So someone's trying to sabotage the feast symbolically, you ask. Symbolically, spiritually, and with poor table manners, Torvald confirms. Then, from the kitchen, another shriek. You both run toward it. The cooks are in chaos. A large pot has overturned, pouring barley stew across the floor. Standing in the middle of it, the head cook, pale and shaking. I saw it, she gasps. So what? A hand. Long fingers. Black nails. Just reaching up from under the cauldron. Then it vanished. You exchange a glance with Torvald. Either someone's pulling off a very committed prank, or something very old is crawling through the cracks. You lean down to examine the pot. Nothing but stew now, grainy, lumpy, and maybe curse. You poke at the underside and find something odd, a scrap of twine, charred at the end and soaked with some foul-smelling oil. Torvald picks it up carefully. Binding cord, he says. Ritual use. Often burned in offerings. He sniffs it, grimaces. Troll fat, maybe. Or rancid seal. You glance at the herring jar, now half empty. So someone's mixing rituals. Which is like mixing pickled shark with milk, Torvald nods gravely. You can do it, but something will scream. A fresh commotion at the far end of the hall draws your attention. This time it's the young stable boy, Einar, breathless and frantic. There's something under the goat pens, he shouts. Torvald stiffens. Not again. Wait, again, you ask. But the priest is already on the move, mumbling about unsealed passages and things that shouldn't be unearthed. You follow. Outside, the night has deepened. The aurora coils above like green fire smoke. You pass through the barnyard to the goat pens, where Einar points to a spot in the corner. A loose patch of turf. You kneel, dig carefully, and uncover something half-buried. A wooden token. Round, carved with spirals, runes, and what looks suspiciously like a laughing face. Torvald takes one look and recoils. Loki's grin, he hisses. The token pulses with warmth. You drop it instinctively. Torvald mutters a warding chant. Why was that buried under goats, you ask? Because it was supposed to stay there, he says. Buried in sacred earth. Neutralized. So someone dug it up. On purpose. He nods. To draw chaos in. The fire, the sabotage, the vanishing boar, the corrupted offerings, each one a step in some twisted ritual. A feast turned inside out. You look toward the longhouse. The smoke from the firehole now curls in strange patterns. The torches flicker oddly. And somewhere, far off, that same thudding sound echoes again. You get the sense that the night is only just beginning. And dinner? Might never be served. Let's be honest, when you signed up for a Viking feast, you were expecting mead, meat, and maybe a spirited insult contest. Not crawling under goat pens in the middle of a blizzard-scented night, uncovering cursed tokens with mischief-god energy and a sense somewhere between burned feathers and regret. But here you are. Again. The earth under the pen is dry, unnaturally so, as if whatever was buried there has been soaking up more than just spiritual attention. The token, Loki's grin, now lies wrapped in a layer of goatskin, muffled and trembling ever so slightly, like it's laughing without sound. Torvald insists it must be reburied. But not here, he says. Not where it can be touched again. You glance around at the field of concerned goats. One is chewing on a chunk of bone that probably wasn't part of its diet. Another is staring at you like it knows what you have for breakfast. The rest just look vaguely possessed. Probably normal. So, you dig deeper, clearing out more of the soil. That's when your hand hits something else. Wood. You scrape away at it. Not just a box, but a carved chest, etched with faded runes. You and Torvald exchange a glance. Neither of you wants to open it, but of course, you both do. Inside, bones. Not animal. Not adult. Small. Childlike. Torvald closes it immediately. Old offerings, he says grimly. From the famine winters. When food was short and people improvised. Historians still debate whether Viking societies ever resorted to human offerings in times of desperation. There's no conclusive proof. But bones like these, hidden and forgotten, don't just end up under goat pens by accident. You're no priest, but you know this, someone unearthed all of this for a reason. Tokens, bones, blessed fish, sacred boars, each element pulled from its resting place and twisted into something new. Someone's building a ritual, you whisper. Torvald nods. Or unraveling one. And then comes the sound again. That low, uneven footstep. Thud. Drag. Thud. Like something half limping, half dancing its way through the dark. You peek around the pen. Nothing. You glance up. There, on the roof of the storage shed, silhouetted against the northern lights, is a figure. Short. Hunched. Draped in furs too large for its frame. It tilts its head too far, then disappears behind the slope. You give chase. Of course you do. Because you're the protagonist here and logic clearly doesn't apply. You scramble over the logs, slipping on icy rungs, but the roof is empty. Nothing but a few scratch marks and a faint smell of burnt cinnamon. Back on the ground, you find something new. A piece of parchment pinned to the door with a sharpened fishbone. Because sure, why not? It reads, "Feast me not, for I am fed already." Torvald groans. That's a trickster's blessing. Inverted. What does it mean? It means, he says, rubbing his temples, that someone offered the feast to something else. Not the gods of this place. Not Freyr. Not even Loki. Something older. Something that eats the memory of meals. You're not even going to pretend to like that phrase. Back inside, the longhouse is in chaos again. Someone has fainted. The skald is composing a dirge instead of a drinking song. And in the hearth, the fire flares up with a hiss, then shrinks again as if breathing. Jarl Astrid slams a mug down. Enough. We end this now. She orders a full sweep of the village. You're assigned the bathhouse, which is, strangely, warm and peaceful at first. A steamy haven where villagers occasionally go to soak, scrub, and complain about their knees. The air smells of juniper and lavender. For 5 whole seconds, it feels almost normal. Until you spot the steam prints. Not footprints. Not exactly. Just imprints in the mist on the floor. Long-toed. Pointed heel. Dripping wet. And walking up the wall. You follow them with your eyes. They trail up the cedar panels, across the ceiling, and vanish through a hole near the rafters. Nope, you whisper, already turning around. But before you can leave, the water in one of the tubs churns. No one's in it. You approach slowly. The surface settles. Then, just beneath the ripple, you see it. A face. Pale. Eyes open. Smiling far too wide. Then it's gone. You stagger back, nearly slipping on a ladle. You burst out of the bathhouse, breath misting hard, and nearly collide with Sveg. You too? He asks, holding a chicken like a weapon. You nod. Something's crawling through the warm spaces. He frowns. The saunas, the storerooms, even the hearths. Anywhere heat lives. It wants warmth. Why? To live in the bones of the feast, he mutters. You don't ask for clarification. Instead, you follow the heat trail to the central smoke vent above the longhouse. A rope ladder's been tied there. You climb, emerging onto the roof again. This time, you see it more clearly. A smear of footprints, soot black and narrowing as they go, leading to the edge of the roof. But no fall marks. Just emptiness. You look up at the sky, at the swirling lights. Then you whisper the most Viking thing imaginable. I want my boar. Because if this thing's still hungry, what else might it eat next? They say berserkers are built for chaos, muscles like ship ropes, brains pickled in mead, and a temperament somewhere between easily startled bear and apocalypse greeter. So when Bjorn the Twice-Thrown, the village's most legendary berserker, sleeps through a feast crisis and potential supernatural sabotage, people start to whisper. You're sent to check on him, mostly because no one else wants to get that close while he's unconscious. Also, because last time someone poked him mid-nap, he chopped a goat through a barrel and named it Thor. Bjorn is in the guest hall, tucked under a bearskin with a half-empty drinking horn in one hand and what appears to be a leak in the other. He's snoring so hard that the ceiling boards are vibrating. But something's off. This isn't regular slept-through-the-party snoring. This is the kind of unconscious that leans toward possibly enchanted. You kneel down. His skin's a bit clammy. His pupils? Pinpoints. And there's a faint, oddly sweet scent coming off him, not like mead, more like crushed herbs. You sniff again. Lavender? Mugwort? And something else. Something sleepy. You lean closer, and that's when you see it, a charm hanging from his belt, half buried in the fur. A small pouch, stitched with red thread and sealed with wax. You carefully untie it. Inside, a blend of herbs, a folded scrap of hide, and a single raven feather. Torvald arrives just in time to frown over your shoulder. Sleep charm, he says, voice low. Old magic. Not harmful, unless misused. Someone put a berserker to sleep on purpose? He nods. A sleeping berserker is like an unlit torch in a thunderstorm, safe for now, but full of potential fire. You glance back at Bjorn, who lets out a snore so powerful it knocks a cup off the nearby shelf. Why would someone knock out the strongest warrior in the village, you ask? Because they didn't want him awake for what's coming. Great. You search the rest of his sleeping area. Under the fur mattress, tucked between two boards, is a long wooden spoon. Innocent enough, until you see the runes carved into the handle. Not the usual protection glyphs either. These are twisted, broken shapes, like a child tried drawing a spell from memory and got distracted halfway through. Disruption magic, Torvald mutters. And the spoon? He shrugs. Symbol of nourishment, turned sour. A poison feast, perhaps. Historians still argue whether Viking magic leaned more toward physical objects or spoken incantations. You're thinking the answer is both, and also whoever was closest to the soup. You and Torvald bring the spoon to Astrid. She listens without interrupting, then drops it into the hearth. It hisses, curls, and blackens almost instantly. Definitely not your everyday utensil. Keep Bjorn asleep, she says. He may be more useful unaware than enraged. You glance at the now snoozing mountain of a man. He doesn't seem to be waking anytime soon. Torvald frowns. That's the problem. As you leave the guest hall, you hear another sound. Soft, rhythmic, humming. You follow it around the side of the building. The melody's odd, familiar but slightly off-key, like a lullaby sung by someone who's never met a child. Then you spot the singer. A young woman you don't recognize, standing barefoot in the snow. Her eyes are shut, her lips moving just enough to send frost into the air. Hello, you call. She stops humming. When she opens her eyes, they don't focus. Not on you. Not on anything. They're the kind of eyes that see through time, or through a hole in reality you didn't ask for. You shouldn't be here, she whispers. Not when the table has been turned. What table, you ask? She smiles. The first one. Then she lifts her hand and scatters something into the wind, dried berries, black and shriveled. They vanish into the breeze like coals flicked from a fire. You step toward her. She vanishes. Not into the woods. Not into a building. Just gone. You dig where she stood. Nothing. No tracks. No warmth. Just snow, and a circle of melted frost in the shape of a spiral. Back inside, Astrid is coordinating a watch. But there's tension now. Half the villagers are whispering that the feast is cursed, that the gods have withdrawn their favor. The Jarl keeps a steady hand, but you can see the cracks in her confidence. Do we wake the berserker? Someone asks. No, she says. Not yet. Because if Bjorn wakes up wrong, dream-soaked and curse-laced, he may be more dangerous to the village than whatever's crawling under the hearthstones. Instead, Astrid orders a search of all ceremonial items. Anything missing, she says, anything moved, anything off. You help inspect the sacred drinking horns. One has been recarved, very subtly. Where once was a symbol of plenty, now a tiny, almost invisible rune has been added, the sign for hollow. You whisper it aloud, just once. The horn splits down the middle. So that's how tonight's going. You regroup with Torvald. Someone's rewriting the feast, he says. Line by line. Item by item. Can it be stopped? He looks grim. Only if we finish it. Before they do. Bjorn snores behind you, oblivious to the fact that he may be the only force strong enough to end this, but also the last person you want waking up mid-chaos. You check his charm pouch again, and feel a strange warmth radiating from it. The feather twitches. The herbs shift, and Bjorn lets out a deep, guttural murmur. I smell apples. You back away slowly. Because if the berserker dreams of boars, and wakes up hungry, let's just say it won't be pretty. You don't even need to be a room reader to know something is wrong with the longhouse door. The carved frame that guards the entrance, a thick beam of oak wrapped in old symbols meant to keep bad things out, or in, depending on who carved them, now bears a new mark. It wasn't there earlier, and it's definitely not part of the original design. A sharp, angular rune, hastily cut into the wood like someone had a grudge against the tree itself. You run your fingers over it. Still splintery. Still fresh. Not deep, but somehow loud. Not in sound, but in presence. It feels like noise, like a scream jammed into a grain. Torvald squints at it and goes quiet. Very quiet. Which rune is it, you ask? It's not one we speak aloud, he answers, then adds, and definitely not one you carve into your front door unless you're trying to invite a cosmic prank into your living room. Is it from the Elder Futhark? He shakes his head. It's older. Proto-curse work. Pre-conversion. Associated with loss, reversal, and very bad parties. So, not exactly a good omen for a feast already teetering on collapse. He raises a hand to trace over it with a smudge of ash and murmurs something. You don't know the language, but the way it coils through the air makes your skin prickle. The rune dims slightly. Not gone, but subdued. For now. I've only ever seen that rune in one place, Torvald says. A cave in the north, sealed off by 5 layers of iron and regret. That symbol marked the entrance. What was inside? No one who went and ever came out. You don't press further. Instead, you check the rest of the doorway. That's when you notice the carvings just below the main threshold. Tiny symbols of protection, fertility, abundance, all scratched out. Not violently, but carefully. Surgically. Someone didn't just efface the doorway. They reprogrammed it. You duck back inside and warn Astrid. She listens, jaw tightening. The house is marked, you say. The door's not keeping anything out anymore. She growls under her breath. Then we'll keep it out ourselves. Easier said than done. You join the guard rotation. The outer buildings are being watched in pairs now. Stables, smokehouse, food cellars. Every shadow's a threat. Every gust of wind feels intentional. That's when the wind changes. It grows warmer. You pause beside the storehouse and notice a new smell. Not fire. Not wood. Something feral. Like wet fur and clove. Something that doesn't belong in the cold. And then you hear the whistle. Just a short, warbling note. A kind of tune no lips should be able to make. It loops once, then vanishes into the forest's edge. You and your partner exchange a glance. Fox, they whisper. No fox plays jazz, you mutter back. You investigate. Of course you do. You're 10 paces from the tree line when you see it, something etched into the bark of a birch. The same angular rune. Again. With something new beneath it, a small wooden disc hanging from twine, spinning slowly in the breeze. You grab it. The disc shows 2 faces. On one side, a smiling man with crooked teeth. On the other, a boar. Its eyes crossed out. Well, that's subtle, you mutter. Trap, your partner asks. Message. To who? You spin the disc again. Maybe us. Back inside, you try to compare the symbol to others you've seen. Torvald lays out old rune scrolls, but none match. That's when an older woman steps forward, the village bonesetter. Quiet, usually. But now, her eyes are sharp. I've seen that rune, she says, on a mask. Everyone turns. 30 winters ago, she continues, a wanderer came through during the midwinter frost. Carried a mask with that rune carved into the forehead. Said he was a rebalancer. Ate only raw oats. Told stories that made people forget their names for a while. Sounds like a delight, you say. He tried to rewrite the feast, she adds. Claimed our version was too clean. What happened to him? She grins. Astrid's mother threw him in the fjord. Good tradition. But the mask, Torvald believes it might be a totem, a focus object for the trickster's magic. A way to project intention. And if someone found it, or recreated it, they might be using it now. You're halfway through planning a full inventory check when a boy runs in from the side building where the musicians are supposed to be warming up. He's pale. Shaking. The runes on the harp. What harp? The ceremonial harp. Oh, no. You all rush to the storeroom where the instruments are kept. Sure enough, the Karju harp, used only during the first feast song, is marred by the same ugly rune, burned into its neck. That thing was buried with my uncle and still came back cursed, the boy whispers. You lift the harp carefully. The strings vibrate faintly. You haven't touched them. Torvald tries to play a simple tune. It comes out backward. Everyone takes a step back. Astrid shakes her head. No music until this is over. No anything until this is over, Torvald corrects. We're dealing with layered mischief. How many layers? He exhales. Think onion. But malevolent. And possibly allergic to pork. There's one more place to check. The old altar stone behind the longhouse, where offerings to Freyr used to be made before the new temple was built. You go with Torvald, 2 guards, and a shield that may or may not be repurposed cookware. When you get there, you find the stone split in 2. A crack runs right through its center, clean and dry, as if lightning struck it from the inside. Carved in the middle? You guessed it. That cursed rune again. But this time, it's not alone. Beneath it is a word, newly scratched into the stone. Replaced. Replaced what? One of the guards whispers. Torvald swallows hard. The offering. The feast. The meaning. He looks up at the flickering aurora above, and then says what no one wants to hear. We're not the ones being fed tonight. Smoke curls above the longhouse like a question with no answer. You stand by the altar, staring at that word, replaced, as the snow hushes around you. No more wind. No animal sounds. Even the ever-present clatter of distant village life has thinned into silence. It's as if the entire world is waiting for something. You and Torvald return to the longhouse to share the news. As you cross the threshold, past the reinscribed doorway that's still humming with bad vibes, you find the hall darker than before. The central hearth burns lower, as if shy. The shadows at the edges of the room seem to lean inward, listening. Where's the Jarl? You ask. She went to the bathhouse, a guard replies. Someone found claw marks in the soap room. Naturally. You take a breath and turn to Torvald. We need more answers. He nods slowly. Then we speak to Halla. You haven't heard the name before. Apparently, Halla is the wise woman of the village, which is a polite way of saying the person you go to when things get weird and everyone else is too scared to say it out loud. She lives at the edge of the forest, in a hut made of turf, driftwood, and too many chicken bones. You trek through the snow toward her dwelling, passing the frostbitten fence posts and the occasional torch that seems to flicker in patterns. The path is quiet, too quiet, and when you reach her hut, there's no smoke from the chimney. But the door creaks open before you knock. Inside, the warmth hits you first, heavy, damp, and thick with the scent of herbs, pine tar, and what might be burnt cinnamon again. Seriously, it's becoming a theme. Candles flicker on every shelf, casting long shadows over jars filled with unidentifiable things. One contains what looks like a single, perfectly preserved duck foot. Another has teeth. Not human. Probably. Halla sits cross-legged near a central fire pit, stirring a bowl of something green and glowing faintly. Her face is lined with age and mischief. Her hair, once white, now seems tinged with gray moss. Her eyes? One brown, one pale like smoke. You came late, she says without looking up. But not too late. You know about the feast? You ask. She chuckles. I know the feast. Which is not ominous at all. Torvald steps forward, respectful. The boar's gone. The offering is spoiled. And the runes? I know about the runes, she snaps. The rune speaks when it's spoken to. And someone's been whispering in all the wrong ears. You glance at the bubbling green soup. Do you know who? She pauses. Then dips a ladle in and pours it across a sheet of bark, where it spreads into an image. The longhouse. But, twisted. Elongated. Roof stretched like pulled taffy. Firelight leaking through the walls. The feast was never for your mouths, she says. It was bait. A promise rewritten. Torvald leans in. By who? Not who. What? Her eyes glint. Something that used to be worshipped. Before the gods had names. Before meat was cooked. She stirs the pot again. And now, it's hungry. She rises slowly and hobbles to a shelf. From behind a curtain of bones, she pulls out a cloth bundle. Inside, a flat stone, painted with 3 symbols, boar, bowl, and spiral. This was buried at the village center, she says. Long ago. To bind what was once freed. You stare at it. And now? Now someone dug it up. Repainted the spiral. Reversed the binding. Why? She shrugs. Curiosity. Or faith. Or maybe they were promised something in return. Either way, you're in the second course now. Torvald grimaces. Can it be stopped? She gives a sly grin. With courage, yes. But mostly with cleverness. You can't fight hunger with blades. What do we do? You find the tongue. You blink. The what? The tongue that speaks the feast. Every offering has a voice. Find it. Silence it. Or feed it something it doesn't want. You don't like any of those options. She leans closer. It's already wearing faces. You've seen it. You think back. The humming girl. The vanishing merchant. The rune on the harp. All masks. All imitations. But of what? Back in the village, a bell sounds, short, frantic. Something's wrong. You sprint toward the sound, through snow that feels stickier now, like syrup freezing into slush. When you arrive at the fire pit, villagers are gathered in a loose, uneasy circle. The Jarl is back, silent, grim-faced. In the center of the gathering lies a boar. Not the boar. A different one. Smaller. Lankier. Almost stringy. Its body is twisted, limbs longer than they should be, snout stretched like taffy. Its eyes are open and glassy, but not dead. Just empty. One of the warriors pokes it. It shudders. Just once. Someone gasps. Another backs away. Then it lets out a sound, not a squeal. A word. Eat. Torvald grabs your arm. That's not food. Astrid signals to her warriors. Burn it. They drag the thing to the fire. As it touches flame, it convulses, releases a thick plume of smoke, and screams, high-pitched and mocking, like laughter underwater. Everyone winces. The fire flares unnaturally tall, then dies back down. What's left is ash. And the scent of cinnamon. Again. Fake offering, Torvald mutters. A decoy. Why send a fake, you ask? To get us used to the taste. Now the villagers are scared. Not panicked, but close. Even the bravest warriors don't meet each other's eyes. The feast is tainted. The night is bending. And whatever was once under the soil is very much aware of its audience. Later, you sit near the dimming hearth, staring into the coals. You hear a whisper, soft, slithering. Still hungry? You turn. No one's there. But the spiral on the hearthstone is glowing again. And beneath your feet, something shifts, just slightly. Like a mouth forming in the stone. You do what any sensible person would do when the floor starts to murmur beneath them. You stand up. Fast. Nearly trip over a log stool. The hearth crackles innocently behind you, playing dumb like it didn't just try to whisper something about appetites and possibly becoming the main course. Torvald is already at your side, face pale and tight. You felt it too? Oh yes, you whisper. The hearth just told me it's still hungry. He nods gravely. Then the binding's almost broken. Great. The Jarl gathers everyone in the hall, her voice like a cold blade. We've burned the false offering. We've closed the doors. Whatever's playing games will find no welcome here. But you're not so sure. Because even as she speaks, the air inside the longhouse starts to change. The heat thickens. Not like fire, more like breath. Warm, damp, and far too personal. Several people start coughing. Others fan themselves. The windows fog over, and the timber walls exhale a faint hiss of steam. It's like the house itself is sweating. Sveg the warrior mutters, "This ain't natural." He's right. You wipe your brow and glance at the beams overhead. Moisture beads along them, dripping into the fire, causing little sizzles. That hearthstone spiral? Glowing again. And then, the sound. From outside. Something between a growl and a groan, as if the fjord itself was complaining after eating too many questionable shellfish. Low. Deep. Rhythmic. It gets louder. And closer. Astrid barks for guards to check the perimeter. You go with them, stepping into the night that no longer feels empty. The village torches flicker oddly, like they're dancing to someone else's rhythm. The snow glows faintly, reflecting the green shimmer above, but now, there's red in it too. Like a sunrise misplaced in time. You follow the sound to the edge of the fjord. And there it is. The food stores, ripped open. Meat gone. Fish barrels cracked. Cabbage strewn across the snow like confetti at the saddest wedding ever. And in the center of it all, oily prints. Not quite hoof. Not quite claw. Just wrong. And circling a fresh hole in the ice, steam rising from it as if the fjord now connects directly to a badly managed kitchen in the underworld. You kneel beside the hole. Inside, the water doesn't churn. It pulses. Thump, thump, like a heartbeat. Your partner whispers, "Is it breathing?" You don't answer. Because just then, you see it, floating just beneath the surface, an eye. Massive, cloudy, unblinking. It drifts past like a sleeping leviathan. then vanishes into the dark. Torvald's voice echoes faintly behind you. It's here! Back inside, people are starting to lose composure. Children cry. Old warriors sit with heads bowed. The festive decorations, birch wreaths, carved centerpieces, pine needle garlands, look absurd now. Like party hats at a funeral. Then someone finds the Jarl's goblet overturned. Nothing strange there, until you realize what's in it. The drink is no longer mead. It's gone black, thick, bubbling slightly. When Sveg pokes it with a knife, the blade corrodes on contact. Poison, you ask. Torvald leans close, sniffs once, then recoils. No. Worse. Forgotten blood. You're about to ask what that means, then you remember the phrase from earlier, something that eats memory. Something that replaces meaning. What if it's not here to kill us? You whisper. What then? Torvald asks. What if it wants to consume the feast itself? The tradition. The symbols. Turn them inside out. He goes quiet. A feast reversed, he murmurs. A sacred inversion. Celebration becomes sacrifice. That's when the smoke hole above starts pouring something in. Not smoke. Mist. Thick, wet, and writhing. Like fingers. The hall begins to fill. You can barely see 10 feet in front of you. Shapes move in the fog. Or maybe just your imagination. Except everyone else sees them too. Astrid calls for weapons, but her voice sounds muffled. Distant. Like she's shouting from behind glass. The fire dims to a dull red coil. And then, through the mist, a figure steps into view. It's wearing a robe stitched from linen in shadows. Its head covered in a half-mask, boar snout, human eyes. The spiral rune painted down the neck in something that glistens like oil. It holds no weapon. It just stands there, watching. Astrid raises her axe. Speak. The thing tilts its head. Then, calmly, it opens its mouth. But instead of words, smells come out. Mead. Charred meat. Pine sap. Ash. And beneath all that, something foul. Rotten berries. Burnt milk. Fondle sugar. The room groans. Literally. The room. The timber structure seems to creak in pain, as if the air itself is turning sour. Then it speaks one word, in a voice that isn't one voice. Many tones. Male, female, child, beast. All speaking as one. Invite. You swallow hard. Invite what? Someone cries. But the figure simply turns and walks, through the wall. Not out a door. Through solid timber. The wall splinters behind it, just slightly. The mist follows. You all exhale. Someone collapses. The mist clears. And the longhouse stands crooked now. Just a bit. As if it's slouched under pressure. That's when you realize something terrible. You're all still hungry. No one has eaten. All that food, spoiled, missing, or reversed. And that's exactly what it wants. Not just the offering, but the people starved of celebration. A village where the feast fails, becomes the feast itself. Torvald whispers, it's not the meal we've lost. You look around at the drained faces, the dim lights, the flickering shadows. It's us. And somewhere outside, something grins. It happens as the first toast is raised. Or, well, was supposed to be. The traditional horn of mead, meant to be passed from the Jarl to her most trusted warrior, to the priest, to the skald, and then to the rest of the hall, now sits untouched in the middle of the long table. It glows faintly. Not from polish, but from something deeper. Internal. Wrong. Astrid's hand hovers above it, unsure. Her fingers twitch once, then recoil like she's touched ice. I don't trust it, she mutters. Neither do you. But Sveg, standing tall and red-cheeked from equal parts pride and second-hand terror, grabs the horn. A toast, he bellows, trying to force the mood back into normalcy. To our Jarl. May her axe be sharp and her goats never disappoint. There's a weak ripple of laughter. Someone even claps. Then Sveg drinks. A long pull. He swallows, wipes his mouth, and slams the horn on the table like he just won a drinking contest. And then he drops. No warning. No shout. Just a solid thud as Sveg's body hits the floor, rigid as a felled tree. Everyone freezes. A second passes. 2. You're first to kneel beside him. His eyes are open, glassy, and locked on the ceiling beams. His mouth twitches. No blood. No convulsions. but his limbs are stiff. His skin has gone slightly pale. Not white, ashen. Like bark. Torvald presses fingers to Sveg's neck. He's alive. Barely. You try shaking him. Nothing. You lift his arm, it stays in place like wood. Paralysis, someone whispers. Astrid growls. Poison. But you look at the horn. The liquid inside doesn't bubble or steam. It just sits there. Gold. Beautiful. Deceptive. You sniff it. Smells fine. Meat and a hint of clove. You take a wooden spoon from the sideboard, dip it in, and pour a single drop onto the floor. The stone beneath it sizzles faintly. A tiny spiral etches itself into the surface, smokes for a second, then fades. You all stare at it. That's not just poison, Torvald says. That's a binding agent. Something meant to freeze, not kill. Why freeze, you ask? He looks around, lowering his voice. Because if it kills, it ends. But if it holds, he doesn't finish. Someone else speaks. It preserves. It's the skald, usually half-drunk and rhyming about pickled turnips. Now his voice is flat. It's storing him. Like a winter stockpile. Preserving people like meat. Someone tries to laugh. It comes out like a wheeze. You gently touch Sveg's arm. Still warm, but stiff. Not completely gone. And then, just under his shirt collar, you spot it. A faint spiral, blooming on his skin like a bruise. Torvald kneels beside you. It's marking him. You both stand. The horn still sits on the table, glowing faintly. You back away. Seal it, Astrid commands. Lock it in the temple. But as two guards reach for it, the horn moves. Just an inch. But no one touched it. It tips. Spills. The meat splashes across the table and onto the floor. And where it touches wood, runes bloom, not carved, not inked. Just appearing. Slowly, like frost etching glass. The same spiral. One of the guards slips trying to clean it up. He doesn't rise immediately. You rush to help him. His hand is stuck to the floor. He yanks it free with a gasp. The palm is raw. And marked. You don't say anything. You don't need to. The spiral is spreading. You meet Astrid's eyes. That horn didn't just poison him. It claimed him. Torvald nods. It was a ritual anchor. A point of entry. You glance at the fire. Still low. Still wrong. What happens if it reaches the hearth? Torvald doesn't answer. Instead, he throws salt. A handful, across the floor. The glow dims slightly where it lands. Salt disrupts it, he says. For now. Villagers begin tossing what they can. Buckets of sea salt. Dried fish skins. Anything vaguely purifying. It helps. A little. But you feel the tension climbing again. A pressure in your ears. Like you're underwater. And then, another sound. Low. Ragged. Shuddering. It's Sveg. Still on the floor, still frozen. But now his mouth is moving. Mouthing words. You lean close. Try to read his lips. One word. Feast. Again. Feast. He repeats it, lips barely twitching. Not begging. Inviting. You grab Torvald. He's repeating the same word. The priest nods grimly. It's turning him into a vessel. Then you both hear it. A low giggle. From under the table. You crouch. There, crouched in the shadows like a child, is a figure. Small. Hooded. Bare feet. Long fingers. Eating something. A rib. From what? You blink. The figure looks up at you. Eyes pitch black. Teeth too many. Mouth too wide. It smiles. Too late to RSVP, it whispers, and vanishes in a curl of steam. You stand slowly. The fire flares again. And Sveg starts to float. Just a little. A few inches. But up off the ground. Like he's becoming lighter than air. Like the air itself is lifting him. Torvald grabs you. It's begun. The feast has started. But it's not the one you were planning. The air holds its breath as Sveg hovers midair, slack-limbed, spiral blooming on his chest like an invitation written in bruises. He turns slightly, unnaturally, like something is spinning him from the inside. No one moves. Even the fire seems frozen in place, its flames reaching out like fingers that can't quite touch. Then he drops. Hard. The floorboards creak, but don't crack. Somehow, That makes it worse. You kneel beside him again, half hoping his eyes will flicker back to life, that the meat-slit curse will wear off. They don't. The spiral still pulses faintly beneath his tunic, like it's waiting. Behind you, the Jarl issues orders, her voice low but urgent. Seal the horn. Salt the doorways. Anyone not helping gets out. You're halfway through sprinkling salt in a clean ring around the hearth when someone taps your shoulder. A child. Pale. Hair mussed like they've been tumbling in hay. No shoes. I saw her, the child says softly. Who? The one with the green eyes. She was whispering to the wood. You frown. The wood? The child nods and points toward the outer village, toward the wise woman's hut. The trees listened. Then they bent. Trees don't bend. Not toward voices. You stand. Torvald? He nods. We should go. Astrid protests, barely. But she knows this night stopped playing by normal rules a long time ago. You and Torvald head out again, past the trembling light of the longhouse, toward the trees that frame the back of the village. They sway in a wind you can't feel. And as you walk, the snow crunches beneath your boots in time with something else. A heartbeat. Yours? You hope so. Then you reach the seeress's hut. Only, it's not a hut anymore. It's collapsed. Half swallowed by the earth. Like something decided it needed to go back where it came from. The doorframe leans at an angle, cracked open just enough to show that all the lights inside have been extinguished. You push it open. The hut is dark, damp, wrong. No more candles. No fire. Just smoldering ash and a bowl of herbs. Something's carved into the wall now, new spirals, overlapping until they resemble eyes. Watching. Unblinking. On the floor, amid shattered jars and trampled bone dust, lies the seeress's staff. Snapped in two. Torvald whispers, she's gone. You think back to her warnings. Her riddles. Her grin. Was she really trying to help, or simply tell you the punchline before the joke landed? You dig through the debris and find something beneath a hide blanket, a small wooden box, blackened with time, sealed with wax and twine. Another offering, you ask. Torvald shakes his head. No. This one's containment. He unwraps it carefully, layer by layer. Inside, a tongue. Desiccated. Not human. Flat. Wide. With runes carved into its surface. You stare. Whose is that? It's the tongue, Torvald says softly. The voice of the feast. The first one ever held here. Long before Freyr. Before gods. He looks up. They fed something ancient. This was its way to speak. So why keep it? To keep it silent. As long as the tongue was bound, the feast was ours. Not its. Then you see it. The wax seal is cracked. The tongue twitches. Very slightly. You both step back. Torvald wraps it again fast, but not before you hear a faint whisper in the back of your mind. You unsealed me. You return to the village at a run. And find things worse. The longhouse is now sealed from the inside. Heavy beams pulled across the doors. The windows have fogged completely, leaking green mist. You pound on the door. Nothing. Then, a voice, Astrid's. Muffled. Don't open it. Torvald cups his hands. What happened? It's in here, she says. Not a creature. A presence. The air's alive. You press your face to the glass slit and see her standing with her axe drawn, face bathed in firelight that's turned red gold green. Behind her, villagers circle the hearth, whispering things you can't hear. One of them is humming. A tune you recognize. From the girl in the snow. Torvald growls. The tongue's been loosed. You hold up the box. We need to bind it again. How? Astrid asks. Salt. Smoke. Silence, Torvald replies. And a new voice. Astrid pauses. What voice? You answer before thinking. Mine. Because of course you do. They let you in through the smoke hole, of all places. You climb onto the roof, hoisted by rope, and drop into the longhouse like a cursed chimney sweep. The inside hits you like a blast of old breath. Warm. Thick. Alive. Everyone's too still. Breathing together. Slowly. Like a hive. You step into the circle. The hearth pulses. The spiral is complete now, etched fully across the stones. Sveg floats again. So do two others. And you hear the tongue in your mind. Feed me. Finish the feast. Torvald throws salt into the fire. It erupts in a hiss. You hold the box high. And speak. Not loud. Just enough. You tell the story of the feast. The real one. You speak of blessings. Of prayer. Of tradition. Of why the offering matters. You anchor it to the land, the people, the food that's grown, hunted, loved. You tell the truth. And the tongue inside the box starts to shake. Then burn. The mist pulls back. The spiral cracks. One of the floating villagers gasps and drops. You keep talking. You sing the old song the skald used to mumble through ill foam. You recite the names of the Jarl's ancestors. You remind the hall what the feast means. Not fear. Not sacrifice. Celebration. The tongue hisses. Cracks in two. And the mist screams. Not aloud. But inside. And then, silence. Real silence. The hearth stops glowing. The runes vanish. The horn stops humming. Sveg coughs once. What happened? You sink to your knees. And the longhouse breathes easy. The feast? Still not ready. But maybe now, it can be. The night doesn't go quiet, it settles. Like snow finally deciding where to land. Inside the longhouse, villagers begin to shift, stretch, murmur. No one's cheering, but the spell is broken, or at least bent out of shape. The spirals fade from the hearthstone, leaving behind soot and faint scorch marks. The floating villagers are grounded once more. Their limbs are stiff, their eyes dazed, but they're breathing. Sveg sits up slowly, rubbing his temple. I had a dream, he mutters. I was a turnip. A royal turnip. Everyone wanted to eat me but also bow to me. Torvald pats him on the back. Sounds about right. Someone tries to laugh. It comes out as a wheeze. You're still on your knees, drained, holding the split tongue box in your lap. The tongue inside it is charred, curled like old leather, but no longer twitching. Silent at last. You wrap it in cloth and hand it to Torvald, who binds it tightly and slips it into his satchel with the nervous care of someone storing an active badger. Astrid walks over. Her shoulders are square again, the fire back in her eyes. Whatever that thing was, she says, it won't dine on us tonight. You open your mouth to respond, then the horn sounds. Not the ceremonial mead horn. The warning horn. A deep, hollow blast that carries through fog and frost, echoing across the hills. You all freeze. Eyes lock. Hearts skip. One of the guards bursts into the longhouse. Ship, he yells. Coming into the fjord. Astrid curses. Another one? Tonight? Torvald narrows his eyes. Not scheduled, is it? No, the guard replies. No flags. No signal runes. Just rowing. Friendly, you ask. The guard shrugs. Rowing in complete silence. Not even shouting at the oarsmen. I call that unfriendly. You all rush outside. The snow has lightened. The aurora shimmers gently now, fading green veils curling over the peaks. But down at the water, the fjord is dark, reflective, and full of menace. There it is. A single longship, black-hulled, gliding over the water with unnatural stillness. No wake. No sound. Its sail is furled, the oars perfectly synchronized. No one calls. No songs. No curses hurled at the wind. Just a boat, approaching like a thought you don't want to finish. Astrid grabs a spyglass. 4, maybe 5 aboard. One standing. Can see their face. You squint into the gloom. The ship looks wrong. A little too long. A little too narrow. The figurehead at the bow is not standard Viking issue. It's a boar, yes, but not carved. It's covered in real tusks. Dozens of them. Sharp, yellowed. Real. That's not decorative, Torvald murmurs. That's ritual. The ship coasts silently into the dock, bumping the pylons with a gentle thok. No ropes are thrown. No gangplank lowered. But the standing figure steps forward, cloaked and hooded in deep green robes. And underneath that hood, nothing. No face. Just a mask. Bone white. Smooth. Spiral etched across the forehead. You suck in breath. Not again. But the figure doesn't move to attack. Instead, it raises a hand and gestures, once, slow and deliberate, toward the shore. The silence stretches. Then, from behind the mask, a voice, low and layered, a gift. The oarsman lifts something from the boat, a covered platter. Tall. Heavy. They carry it up the dock like pallbearers. Stay back, Astrid commands, but her voice shakes. They set it down on the dock. Remove the cloth. It's a boar. A real one this time. Huge. Perfectly roasted. Glazed with herbs, apples in its mouth and belly. Aromas of thyme, smoke, and honey drift over the water. And yet, you step closer. The scent turns sour at the edge of your nostrils. Too sweet. Too perfect. It smells like an idea of a feast. Not food. The masked figure speaks again. You lost your meal. We return it. Torvald frowns. Why? To complete what you began, it says. To let it end. Historians still debate whether Vikings ever received offerings from unknown entities. Some sagas speak of gods arriving in mortal form. Others warn of imitations, things from the in-between. You don't wait for consensus. You step forward. I saw the spiral, you say. I heard the tongue. I know what this is. The figure tilts its head. Then you understand. You tried to break it, but you are part of it now. Torvald reaches out, placing a hand on your shoulder. We don't take gifts for masks. Astrid lifts her axe. If this is trickery. No, the figure says calmly. This is tradition. Yours. Twisted, maybe. But still yours. Then, with no further word, the figure returns to the ship. The oarsmen follow. And the longship drifts silently back into the fog. The boar remains. Steaming. Perfect. Astrid turns to you. Well? You stare at the offering. It hasn't moved. Yet. It's bait, you say. Torvald agrees. Or a mirror. Of what we almost became. Astrid hesitates. Then she signals to her guards. Burn it. They pile it on the dock. Stack branches and brush. Set it ablaze. As the flames take the boar, the spiral scorches itself into the dock boards, writhing once before crumbling to ash. The fire roars. The villagers watch in silence. And high above, the aurora flares one last time, curling like smoke in reverse. You all stand there, watching. The gift is gone. The ship is gone. The nightmare? Not gone. But maybe finished. For now. It's well past midnight now, but sleep is not even a rumor in Jarfjell. The villagers are quiet, eyes wide and glossy, some sitting in corners as if movement might trigger the return of whatever that was. You're inside again, warm only in the most technical sense, standing with Astrid and Torvald as they examine the altered guest list parchment, now recovered from the ceremonial chest, and recently, very suspiciously, rewritten. This was locked, Astrid mutters, holding up the heavy iron-bound chest. 3 guards swore it hadn't been opened. Yet there it is, ink still drying. Names crossed out, others added. Some in elegant hand, others barely legible, scratched like someone was writing mid-seizure. Torvald leans in. Look at this, he says, pointing to a symbol beside one of the new names. A spiral, yes, but faint. Subtle. Hidden in the curve of a letter. Who's Mariner? Astrid asks. You and Torvald exchange looks. That name's not local, you say. Not even nearby. And sure enough, no one remembers inviting him. The problem? Mariner signed the guest list, sat at the high table, ate the starter course, then vanished. You sift through the names and find 3 more like that, outsiders with no known origin, now gone. And every single one signed their name in that same tight, curling hand. One of them even wrote the wrong year. We didn't invite them, Torvald says flatly. They invited themselves. That would explain the missing mead. The herbs. The odd runes on the harp. They were setting the table, you whisper. You begin tracking where each of the names had been seated. One at the edge of the hearth. One near the entrance. One directly across from Sveg. Positioned like runes, Torvald mutters. Anchoring points. They weren't guests, you say. They were ingredients. Astrid shudders. Then what happens when you serve the wrong guests? You don't have to wonder long. Outside, a scream. Not panicked. Relieved. You run outside and find 2 young men near the goat barn, arms full of something heavy, wrapped in cloth and slick with melted ice. We found it, one shouts. We found the real boar. And there it is. The original centerpiece, missing since morning. Frozen stiff, hidden under a layer of snow beneath a collapsed woodpile. The apple's still in its mouth. The herbs still crusted on its flanks. Someone hid it, preserved it. You help unwrap it carefully, and that's when you see the string of runes carved along its spine, not butcher's marks, but symbols. They sealed it, Torvald says. Bound it with silence. To keep it out of the ritual, you add. Which means someone else tried to protect it. The question is, who? And why hide the truth until now? The boars return to the longhouse, placed not on the fire pit, but on a stone table near the altar for inspection. Astrid debates cooking it now, giving the village a proper end to the cursed celebration. But Torvald hesitates. If it was bound to keep the feast from becoming something else, he says, we don't unseal it without care. So you make a plan. A second feast. A corrective one. A reclaiming. Not in the longhouse, but outside, under the moon, with salt lines marked in the snow and the spiral etched not in ash, but broken, symbolically and literally, on stone. Villagers begin to gather, cautious but curious. Torvald leads a cleansing rite using the last of the sacred herbs, this time without interference. No mystery runes, no reversed meanings, just old words in a warm cadence. The seeress's hut remains collapsed, no sign of her. But something about the air feels lighter. Maybe she gave her life to break the spiral's hold. Or maybe she vanished before it snapped back. Astrid steps forward. Her voice is calm, but not cold. We name each guest who belongs. We speak the names. We remember. One by one, the villagers do just that. A naming rite. Spoken aloud, slowly, each syllable grounding them to this moment, to this world, to this feast. It's a small act, but powerful. Historians still argue whether such rituals held real weight or were symbolic gestures, but in a night like this, you don't care. You feel the shift. The longship never returned. The masked guests are gone. And the feast, now finally lit beneath stars and flame, begins again, not out of fear, but choice. The meat roasts. The meat flows. And when Astrid carves the first slice, no mist coils out, no runes flicker. Just the scent of honest food. We win? You ask Torvald. He doesn't answer immediately. Just stares at the horizon. For now, he says. But there's always another solstice. Another offering. Then he lifts his cup, and for once, you all drink in peace. You're barely halfway through your first bite of turnip mash, now mercifully free of curses, when someone bursts into laughter near the ice cellar. Not the joyful kind. The nervous, slightly too loud kind that usually precedes a bad decision. You squint through the torchlight. It's one of the young scouts, hunched over by the open trapdoor leading down into the village's deep freeze. It's moving, he says between manic chuckles. There's something down there and it's definitely not fish. The laughter dies on its own. Everyone goes quiet. Astrid lowers her carving knife, her gaze turning from feast to frost in a single breath. The cellar, she repeats. The scout nods. We were doing final checks, figured we'd reclaim our salted herring stock before it sings sea shanties again, and the trap creaked. There's breathing. You exchange a look with Torvald. We checked the cellar, you whisper. Twice. We never checked under it, he mutters. Of course. Why would anyone check beneath the lowest, darkest, coldest part of the village? Why wouldn't the final loose thread be hidden where even the rats shiver? Torvald, Astrid, and you descend the narrow ladder. It's cold, dim, and every step down feels like peeling another layer off the night's sanity. You land on packed snow and frozen stone, shelves stacked with fish, meats, barrels of butter hard as rock. It smells of brine and smoke. You hear it before you see it, a sigh. A long, exhaling moan that vibrates the floorboards overhead. You hold your torch higher and spot a hole in the far corner. Not natural. Dug from beneath. A perfect ring, wide enough to crawl through, rimmed with scratch marks. Something tunneled up. And didn't leave. Torvald mutters a charm. Astrid draws her short axe. You, of course, have a torch and a rope. Because you're the main character, apparently. You crouch beside the hole. The sighing stops. And from the dark comes a sound worse than any whisper. Chewing. Slow. Wet. Determined. Astrid starts to move, but Torvald grabs her arm. It's feeding, he says. Not on flesh. On warmth. Memory. What's left of the fear. Can it be stopped? You whisper. He hesitates. It depends what it wants. You peer down. At first, nothing. Then movement, faint green flickers, like aurora caught in oil. A shape, half-formed, curling along the edge of visibility. And a smell, cinnamon again. Always the cinnamon. Then it speaks. No voice. No words. Just emotion. Regret. Hunger. Longing. A sense that this thing was never meant to stay this long. That you were never meant to see it. Then it retreats. Not in fear, but satisfaction. The chewing stops. And so does the hole. The edge of the tunnel begins to crust over with ice, as if sealed from the inside. You stagger back. Is it done? No, Torvald says. It's full. You return to the surface, shaken but alive. Above, the villagers have resumed the meal. Carefully. Slowly. As if any wrong word might uninvite the peace you've worked so hard to reclaim. The goat pen is quiet. The longhouse no longer leans. The spiral stones at the base of the fire pit are shattered and salted, swept aside like bad dreams. You sit by the fire and stare into the glow, and for a moment, it's just warmth. Honest warmth. No runes. No whispers. No eyes in the smoke. Then a child plops down beside you. There was a troll in the ice, she says matter-of-factly. It tried to borrow my name. You blink. What did you do? She shrugs. I gave it someone else's. You pause. Whose? She grins. That merchant who said soup was too aggressive, fair enough. Torvald joins you. That thing, he says, was part of the feast now. Not a guest. Not an enemy. A relic. We just dug too deep, you murmur. Not into earth. Into tradition. He nods. And we remembered it too well. Invited it without meaning to. Names carry weight. The villagers begin to toast again. Cautiously. The harp is played once, gently, and this time forward. The Jarl even cracks a smile. You think it'll come back? You ask Torvald. He exhales. Everything comes back. Eventually. And then, from the shadows near the edge of the village, something stirs. A grunt. Low. Familiar. Heavy footsteps crunch through the snow. You rise, heart clenching. A figure approaches. Covered in furs, carrying a half-frozen log like a toy. It's Bjorn the Twice-Thrown. Awake. And furious. I missed the feast, he bellows. You almost cry. You were poisoned. Or spelled. Or something. He snorts. You didn't wake me up for boar? Astrid claps him on the back. We didn't want you to eat the wrong thing. I'll eat everything, Bjorn growls. Including the table. He stomps toward the fire pit. You all laugh, finally. Because maybe it's over. For now. The tongue is bound. The spiral is cracked. And the feast has begun again. The feast, in full swing now, roars to life with the sound of laughter, the crackle of fire, and the faint off-key hum of the village sculpt attempting a new verse about the time the herring turned into a prophet. You're exhausted, emotionally pickled, and still a little unsure about whether the potatoes on your plate are sentient, but for the first time all night, things feel almost normal. Almost. That is, until Torvald grabs your arm and mutters, they're lighting the ring. You glance toward the far end of the gathering, where several villagers are assembling a circle of stones and pitch-soaked torches. Not for warmth, for ceremony. You know this part, it's traditional to perform a blessing dance around a fire ring during a solstice feast. But as you step closer, you realize something's off. The stones are too old. Too worn. And there are 8 torches, not the usual 6. Someone modified the layout, you whisper. Torvald nods, lips thin. This isn't a blessing. This is a call. Astrid arrives beside you, frowning. It's supposed to be symbolic, she says. Just dance, fire, and a goat jumping through a hoop. No hoop, someone mutters. Goat's gone. You sigh. Of course it is. You examine the pattern and realize the stones form a spiral, again. But inverted. Instead of curling inward, they spiral outward, pulling energy away from the center. It's a symbol of release. Of sending something forth. This was part of the original ritual, Torvald says. But reversed. Instead of summoning, it unseals. So someone's trying to let it go? Or let more in? You spot the culprit before anyone else does. A figure in a simple linen robe, face veiled, walking the edge of the circle with a pouch of ash in one hand and what appears to be a braid of hair in the other. The ashes falling into the flames as they walk. That's not part of the tradition, you mutter. Torvald's already moving. You follow, Astrid close behind. You reach the ring just as the figure completes the final pass. The flames flare, not red or orange, but green. A deep, swirling emerald, like the aurora reached down to touch fire. The wind drops. The air freezes. The villagers go silent. The figure turns. The veil falls. You don't recognize the face. Pale. Sharp. Eyes completely black. No whites. No color. Just void. You didn't finish the offering, they say. The voice is wrong. Not deep. Not high. Just detached. We sent a gift. We burned it, Astrid says, stepping forward. We refused it. And yet here you are, the figure murmurs. Rebuilding the feast. As if nothing happened. Because that's what people do, you snap. We heal. We reclaim. We don't let you rewrite our traditions. The figure blinks, slow and disinterested. Then let us rewrite you. Torvald throws a handful of salt into the circle. The flames snap sideways, howling like wine down a chimney. The figure staggers back, briefly showing a shimmer beneath their skin, like smoke trapped in a skin suit. Then they vanish. Not into air. Not into flame. Down. As if the earth swallowed them mid-breath. The fire ring collapses. The spiral scorches into the ground. And silence returns, broken only by a single crack, snap, as the central torch splits down the middle. You sigh. Okay. That's at least the 5th supernatural exit we've seen tonight. 6th, Torvald corrects. That girl near the well vanished twice. You turn to Astrid. How many more rituals do we have to neutralize before we can eat in peace? She shrugs. Maybe one more. You follow her gaze. Toward the temple. You'd almost forgotten it, empty all evening, the sacred building where the village once offered food, weapons, and art to Freyr. No one's dared approach it tonight. Until now. Because the doors are open. And flickering within? That same green light. Of course, you mutter. Because the gods are nothing if not dramatic. You, Torvald, Astrid, and 2 guards approach slowly. No one speaks. The light pulses faintly, like a heartbeat. Inside, the altar stands untouched, the offerings from earlier still laid out, oats, boar fat, mead, and a braid of woven grain. But on the wall behind it, something's changed. The mural, an ancient painting of Freyr with golden beard and arms outstretched, has been altered. Subtle. But there. The mouth is smiling too wide. The beard has moved. The arms now form a spiral. It's not Freyr anymore, Torvald says softly. It's a mask. You throw more salt, nothing happens. It's not present. It's just residue. A warning, Astrid adds. Or a promise. You walk slowly to the altar, place your hand on the stone, and feel the heat beneath. Still warm. Still open. We didn't end it, you whisper. We redirected it. Contained it. But it's still watching. You leave the temple, closing the doors. Not locked, just shut. Sometimes that's enough. You return to the feast. Villagers are eating again. Carefully. Cautiously. But with more color in their faces. You grab a plate, finally. And yes, the potatoes aren't cursed. Victory. Bjorn is dancing with the goat, which mysteriously reappeared wearing a crown made from napkins and hay. You sit beside Torvald. Are we safe now? No, he says, chewing thoughtfully. But we're remembered. And in this place, that might be better. It's hard to trust a meal after a night like this. Even harder to trust a perfectly cooked boar when you've already seen one try to talk. But here it is, the original, sacred centerpiece finally turning on the spit. Its skin golden and bubbling, herbs hissing quietly as juices drip onto the fire below. It should smell divine, and it does. Almost too divine. Still, everyone watches as the Jarl slices the first piece with the reverence usually reserved for crowning kings or appeasing wrathful gods. You're next in line. You accept the portion, sniff it, inspect the grain of the meat, and, against better judgment, take a bite. It's delicious. Rich, smoky, tender. Which only makes you more suspicious. You chew cautiously, expecting hallucinations, flashbacks, or perhaps for the meat to whisper directly to your spleen. Nothing. Just good food. Astrid nods. It's clean, she declares. Torvald pokes at his slice with a knife. Seems normal. A pause. That's not comforting. But gradually, hunger trumps fear. Plates fill. Mugs refill. And for the first time in what feels like several decades compressed into one night, the feast begins to feel like a feast again. Laughter returns, not nervous, not forced. Real. Someone even burps a toast, which is frankly more traditional than anything else that's happened so far. And then someone screams. Of course. Everyone jolts. It comes from the far table, the youngest serving girl clutching her stomach, eyes wide with panic. It's back, she gasps. It's not the same boar. She points to the meat. Taste it again. You frown. Bite. Chew. Still tastes like boar. But now there's something else. A sharp tang, almost metallic. Not blood. Something darker. You spit it out and run to the carving table. One of the hindquarters has changed color, subtly, from pink gold to gray. You slice deeper. The muscle beneath is darker, denser, fibrous. You pull out a sliver and hold it to the torchlight. It's not meat. It's mushroom. You call Torvald over. He sniffs it, grimaces. That's not just a mushroom. That's corpse fungus. Like what grows in grave sites, he nods, or forgotten places. Someone laced the boar. Astrid slams her knife into the table. A decoy. Again. But it's worse this time. This boar was the real one. The one they prepared. Meaning someone tampered with it after it was recovered. You glance around. Most of the guests haven't eaten much. But those who have look dazed. Sweaty. The skald is trying to rhyme boar with door and floor and is forgetting his own name. You grab one of the goblets. Mead, right? Wrong. The scent is subtly bitter. You take a droplet on your finger, taste it, and recoil. It's not mead. It's brewed from some kind of spore-fermented syrup. This wasn't just poison, you say. It's mind-altering. Whoever did this didn't want to kill us. They wanted to confuse us. Torvald nods grimly. To turn the final feast into a dream. Or a ritual hallucination. That's when someone begins to chant. A low, droning tone from a villager near the hearth. His eyes are glazed. Hands outstretched. He begins to spiral in place. Not spinning. Spiraling. Like something invisible is pulling him inward. Others begin to join. Slowly. Without knowing why. They all hum in the same note. Torvald yells, "Salt! Get the salt!" You scatter it across the floor. Immediately, the humming stutters. Those entranced falter, blink, rub their eyes. One of them vomits turnip mash and fog. Literal fog. You haul the meat off the fire pit. It hisses, shrivels slightly, and leaks dark fluid. Not blood. Not juice. Ink? It's feeding again, Torvald says. But not on flesh. On intention. You stare. Someone corrupted the boar after it was recovered. Rewrote the meaning of the meal again. Not just someone, Torvald mutters. There's still one guest unaccounted for. You don't hesitate. You sprint toward the guest registry, where Astrid has sealed it in a chest. You rip it open. The parchment flutters. All names accounted for. Except one. At the bottom, in faint ink, reserved. A name. Borand. Not written before. You've never heard it. Who's Borand, you ask. No one answers. Then, from the fire pit, a shape rises. Slowly. Carefully. With exaggerated slowness. It looks like the boar. Smells like the boar. But walks like a man. Cloven feet. Smoke rising from its eyes. Its mouth opens. No teeth. Just a spiral. It raises one hand, a human hand, and points at the sky. Feast, it says. Not a whisper. A command. Torvald hurls the last of the salt. The thing screams. Not in pain. In disappointment. You still won't let me finish, it hisses. We're not food, you say. You're not invited. The creature turns to ash. No flourish. No fire. Just collapse. The room falls silent. The real boar, what's left, is dragged away. Burned. The guests recover slowly. One by one. And the feast continues. Not triumphantly. But with dignity. Cabbage, turnip, meat, real meat, return to the table. Laughter returns, soft and sincere. The final toast is raised with water and salted bread. You lean back. Was that the last course? Torvald shrugs. With trickster things, Dessert is always optional. You both drink. And hope. The fire burns steady now, crackling with the calm rhythm of something that knows it's no longer the center of a storm. The longhouse breathes in sync with it, wood expanding and contracting gently in the warmth. You sit cross-legged beside Torvald, sipping from a cup of broth that has absolutely no chance of being cursed. It's bland. Beautifully bland. The taste of safety. Astrid leans against the wall nearby, her boots off, a wet cloth tied around one bruised knuckle. Well, she mutters. That was a feast. You nod. Is this the part where someone jumps up and says it's all a test? If they do, she says, I throw them into the fjord. Around you, the villagers begin to clean. Not as a command, but as instinct. Scraping plates, gathering discarded bones, resetting mugs. The act of tidying after terror is oddly therapeutic. Bjorn the Twice-Thrown is passed out near the hearth with a full chicken in each hand and a smile that says he won't remember any of this in the morning. Probably for the best. Torvald quietly approaches the spiral-marked guest list and, with a careful flick of his blade, removes the lower third. The names that didn't belong. He rolls the section, sprinkles salt on it, and tosses it into the fire. It flares once and disappears. Reckon that ends the script, you ask. The ritual script, I mean. Hard to say, he replies. Spirals don't really end. They just tighten or loosen. But that part won't be read again. Someone passes a dish your way, a second attempt at roasted boar, this time verified by 3 separate elders, a child with an exceptional sense of smell, and a goat. You try it. Tender. Real. Mortal. Excellent. Then the fire pit shifts. Not violently. Just a hush. The flames dim slightly, as if something is approaching. From behind you, a heavy figure steps forward. Not from the forest. From the past. You turn, and there's the skald. But he's not rhyming, not drinking. He's holding something in both hands. A bowl. Shallow. Carved with runes you haven't seen before. It was buried, he says. Under the table where the first toast was supposed to be. Another cursed object? Astrid asks, already standing. No, he says. A memory. Or a promise. He sets it at the foot of the hearth and steps back. The fire flares. Not green, not red, just fire. True. Pure. Then the bowl hums. Softly. A tone that cuts through the fatigue, the fear, the layered confusion. It's not magic. It's not danger. It's reminder. You suddenly see the night in reverse. All of it. The missing boar. The sigils. The figures. The gifts. The rituals. The sabotages. And you realize, it wasn't just one force trying to corrupt the feast. It was many. Conflicting. Clashing. Some wanted the spiral opened. Others, closed. Some craved destruction. Others, performance. It wasn't one trickster, you murmur. It was a feast of tricksters. Torvald nods slowly. A gathering of hungers. Competing. Masked. Each leading just enough to confuse the next. You laugh, a little bitterly. Like a chaotic potluck where everyone brings cursed soup. And the only winning move was to not eat at all, Astrid adds. You sit back. The fire cracks again, soft now. A few children chase each other outside. One of them has fashioned a spiral from pine needles, only to stomp it flat with exaggerated glee. Good. Very good. Then someone from the docks runs in, breathless. There's something in the water, he says. You brace. Again? Really? But when you follow him down to the edge, you find only a bundle, floating gently. A small woven boat no larger than a basket. Inside, fruit. Dried fish. A folded note. Torvald reads it aloud. We return what we borrowed. Thank you for the performance. The spiral turns again, no signature. No clue. Just a final offering. A gift, or a goodbye. Maybe both. Do we burn it, you ask? No, Torvald says. We let it drift. He pushes it back into the fjord. The current catches. The boat sails away without effort. You return to the longhouse. Inside, a quiet joy simmers beneath the fatigue. The kind of joy that only comes when people survive something they weren't supposed to. When the story could have ended in ash and instead ends with dessert. You sit beside Astrid and raise a mug. To survival, you say. To stubbornness, she replies. The villagers join in, some raising bread, some meat, one raising a spoon like it's a sword. A final toast, not to gods or monsters, but to the table itself. To the meal. To each other. You eat, this time without fear. You taste salt, smoke, apples. You chew slowly. You are not a sacrifice. You are a guest. You are remembered. The air feels changed now, less like something pressing in and more like space has finally made room to breathe again. The feast continues in a gentler rhythm, no longer desperate or suspicious, but simply human. Dishes pass from hand to hand, second servings are offered without glances over the shoulder, and someone finally finds the courage to play the harp again, softly this time, each note double-checked for demonic undertones. You wander through the longhouse, cup in hand, observing the aftermath. It's not quite victory, but it's something even rarer, relief. Bjorn the Twice-Thrown is snoring like an avalanche, now wearing one of the goat's crowns. Torvald is quietly gathering remnants of the rituals, burnt salt circles, discarded tokens, bowls of once suspicious stew, for burial in the sacred grove. Even cursed leftovers need a proper ending, he mutters. You join Astrid near the far table, where a new boar has been placed, not enchanted, not symbolic, just well roasted and fragrant. She carves carefully, placing slices onto wooden plates with steady hands. We finish this our way, she says. No masks. No monsters. Just meat. The villagers eat with more than hunger now, they eat with purpose, with pride. A skald recites a short poem, something about fire, bread, and not accidentally opening ancient portals. The rhyme scheme is questionable, but the laughter it earns is not. The children play near the door, tossing stones and giggling, the kind of noise that repels shadows better than any ward. Someone even opens the side windows, letting in fresh air, and for the first time all night, the stars above Jarfjell don't seem to be watching. You carry a plate of turnips outside and sit beside Torvald on a stump near the frozen field. Think it's over? You ask. He doesn't answer right away. Just chews a bit of meat, then swallows. The feast is over, he says. The memory isn't. But we've reclaimed it. The wind picks up, brushing through the trees like someone softly closing a curtain. What was it, really, you ask? The thing behind all this? He shrugs. A trickster. Or many. Hungry ideas. Forgotten gods. It's hard to tell the difference anymore. But whatever it was, it only had power because we stopped remembering why we feasted in the first place. You nod. So the story got twisted. All stories do, eventually, he says. But tonight, we told our own again. The firelight glows from the longhouse behind you, golden and steady. Someone shouts that there's more bread. Someone else responds with a cheer so exaggerated you know they're just glad it's not singing. Astrid joins you outside, mug in hand, cloak wrapped tight against the cold. You know, she says, this might be the first time a solstice feast ended without a duel, a sacrifice, or a goat-related injury. The night's still young, you point out. She grins. Don't tempt it. A shooting star crosses the sky. Someone gasps, and a small child asks if it's a blessing or a warning. Depends who's watching, Torvald replies. Inside, the music picks up, a reel, lively and fast. Bjorn's awake again, shouting about dancing and table wrestling. Two older women are arguing gently about which herb finally purified the soup. A third insists it was her yelling that scared the curse out. Honestly, it might have been. You walk the village perimeter one more time out of habit. Just to be sure. The trees are silent. No faces in the mist. The temple remains closed. The spiral on the fire pit has been chipped away, salt worked deep into the cracks, and now replaced with a symbol of the sun, sharp, bright, and human. And in the snow just beyond the path, something new. A single footprint. Bare. Small. Headed away from the village. You don't follow it. You just nod. Let it go. Back in the longhouse, Astrid raises her cup one final time. To old stories retold, she says. To traditions worth keeping, and monsters worth defeating. You add, and to every turnip that didn't fight back. Laughter rolls through the hall. A few tears too. But they're the kind that come after fear passes. The kind that taste like hope. You sit. You eat. You exist. You are not cursed. You are not marked. You are not forgotten. The feast has ended. But its meaning is alive. Morning slides in slow, a pale curtain pulled across the world, and for the first time in what feels like a lifetime packed into one sleepless night, you see the village of Jarkjel bathed in light. Not firelight. Not torchlight. Not spectral green shimmer. Just clean, cold dawn. The snow glistens undisturbed, smoke curls upward from longhouse chimneys, and the sky holds no secrets. Inside, the longhouse is a patchwork of sleeping villagers, half-finished meals, empty mugs, and the quiet rhythm of peace. You step over a collapsed bench, past Bjorn, snoring like a thunder god with a hangover, and make your way to the hearth. The spiral is gone. The stone has been scrubbed, salted, and cracked. In its place sits a simple carved plate bearing three things: a coin, a bit of bread, and a sliver of cooked boar. A thank you, Torvald says from behind you. To the old gods, the new ones, and the parts of ourselves that got us through. You nod. You're not sure if you believe in blessings, but after last night, you absolutely believe in respect. A ritual that starts with fear and ends with gratitude. That's something worth preserving. Outside, Astrid calls for a final gathering. Not a feast, not a ceremony, just a reckoning. The village assembles in the open clearing where the makeshift spiral fire ring once stood. It's been dismantled, each torch carefully buried, the stones scattered to different corners of the village so they can't realign on their own. Astrid speaks with the calm command of someone who knows the value of endings. This feast was nearly lost. To trickery. To fear. To forgetting. She pauses, sweeping her gaze across her people. But we remembered. Not the rituals. Not the runes. Each other. We ate together. We suffered together. And we stood against a story that wanted to rewrite us. She kneels, picks up a fresh carved spiral, the benign kind, a sun spiral meant to symbolize life, and holds it high. Let this be the only spiral we pass forward. Not one that draws us down, but one that leads us on. The villagers cheer, some weep. The children don't fully understand, but they clap because clapping feels right. You stand beside Torvald, arms crossed against the chill. What now, you ask? We build new myths, he says. We eat, we sing, we honor what matters. And the weird thing in the ice cellar? Still sealed. But we'll keep watch. What about the spiral-born guests? Gone. Or resting. Or waiting for another feast. You consider that. So we just stay ready? No, he says. We live. Prepared, but unburdened. Fear is no use if it eats the joy too. You nod. You're tired, but not hollow. The village feels whole again. Not untouched, not unchanged, but healed, in the way only communities can be after brushing up against something older and darker than they ever imagined. Back at the longhouse, breakfast is a quieter affair. Porridge, boiled eggs, leftover bread, and a single plate set on the hearth with a fresh piece of boar and a folded note that simply reads, "No hard feelings." Until next time. You raise an eyebrow. Torvald chuckles. Some guests never really leave. Later, you help collect what remains of the feast, cleaning bowls, gathering knives, wrapping food for the next day's meals. One of the children gives you a carved figure, a boar with wings and a mustache. He's magical, she says. But only if you let him sleep in a warm place. You thank her. And you mean it. As you prepare to leave the longhouse, you glance back one last time. The tables are mostly cleared. The floor's been swept. A few villagers still nap, limbs sprawled across benches, snoring like thunderclouds. And at the far end, Bjorn has begun composing an epic about punching a cursed meatball. It rhymes. Badly. But he's very proud. You walk out into the sun. Snow crunches beneath your boots. The fjord glitters like silver cloth. And above it all, the mountains stand unmoved, unimpressed, and completely oblivious to the chaos they have witnessed. The story of the Vanishing Viking Banquet will be told again. You know that. Not accurately, never that. There'll be new versions, new heroes, a few extra monsters, and possibly a subplot about a haunted spoon. That's how stories work. They spiral too. But you'll be there to nudge it back on course, to remind people that the heart of the feast isn't in the meat or the fire or even the warding runes. It's in the sharing, the remembering, the return. Now the snow softens, and the sky lightens into that pale pink hush that only winter mornings know. The village settles. The fires burn low. The last cup is drunk. The final story ends. You lie back in your bed, wrapped in warmth, the echo of laughter still lingering somewhere in your bones. You feel the peace of full bellies and safe hearths. The silence after a storm. The hush that comes when the fear has passed but the meaning remains. Let yourself sink into that calm. Let the weight of your eyelids match the heaviness of rest that waits just beyond the next blink. In your mind, the longhouse still glows. A faint flicker of gold against dark timber walls. Someone hums a lullaby in a corner. Someone stirs a pot not to summon, but simply to feed. Let the memory of the spiral fade. Let the shadows go with it. Nothing is reaching anymore. Nothing is whispering now. Only the slow breath of sleep, the steady rhythm of peace, and the quiet promise that stories don't have to end in fear. They can end in warmth, in survival, in waking up tomorrow with the chance to remember it all as just a very strange dream. So close your eyes. Settle into stillness. The feast is over. The fire is safe. And no one's vanishing anymore. Sweet dreams.